everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Chargers Analytics with Arjun. In this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the games that the Chargers choked away in 2020 and just going over some of the analytics behind where the Chargers ranked in terms of second half defense, in terms of first half defense, and why I think this could all change under Brandon Staley in 2021. Now, Brandon Staley undoubtedly had the league's best defense in 2020, whether it be in first half, second half, or in total, right? But I think one thing that was super underrated was his ability to make adjustments on the fly during halftime, during certain quarters, and against good teams. Like, he legitimately had a really good defensive game plan for some of the best offenses in the league. And today we're going to be going a little bit through his defense and how that's stacked up with Gus Bradley's defense in 2020. So as usual, let's dive straight into it. I'm going to share my screen and go to the first thing we're going to be looking at, which is the Chargers first half EPA per play for every single game in 2020. Again, EPA stands for expected points added, and it is one of the best ways to measure defensive and offensive success, as it takes into account that not all yards are created equal. So this is a metric that we're going to be using to evaluate, the Chargers defense last year in the first half and the second half. So as we can see, the Chargers had a lot of games where they had a really good defense in the first half of that game, right? So the red bars each represent a percentile. So the first one is 25th percentile. The second bar is like the mean, the 50th percentile. And then the third bar is the 75th percentile. So in total, the Chargers had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games where they had a really good defense in the first half, right? Above 75%, above the 75th percentile means they had a really good defense. And, in some of these games, we as fans, we could watch on TV and say hey, this defense looks good. Like, we're getting after the quarterback. We're making plays on the ball, getting pass breakups. The other team's offense is not able to move down the field. Like, I remember watching the Saints game and Drew Brees was looking flustered out there. Like, he wasn't able to move the ball down the field. Nasir Adderley had a pick that he took back to the 1 yard line. Like, overall, the first half defense was really good last year. And in terms of where they ranked across the league in the first half, the Chargers actually had the 4th best defense in terms of EPA per play allowed in 2020, right? And they had a lot of games where they really showed that they could hang with some of the best teams in the league, despite missing starters like Derwin James, like Melvin Ingram, like Justin Jones, and Drew Tranquill. But in typical Chargers fashion, they had a really good first half, and then their defense just threw away the second half, right? Most, if not all, the games that they had a really good first half in, their defense just did not show up to play. And it could have been the play calling. It could have been the players being tired and not being able to rotate, some injuries on the back end. There were some games where they just weren't able to muster anything in the second half. Like, if we look at all the games they choked, right? They choked the Kansas City game. They were up 10. Justin Herbert threw that pick, and then the Chiefs drove down and scored, went into OT. They choked the Bucs game big time, up 17. I know Joshua Kelly put them in a horrible situation, but in that second half, they couldn't stop a nosebleed, right? Scotty Miller was getting behind guys like Casey Hayward. Mike Evans was toasting our defense all day. And then in that Saints game, I was watching that, and Drew Brees was struggling in that first half, but he just was dotting us up in that second half. Jared Cook, long touchdown. Alvin Kamara was getting things out of the backfield. And that Broncos game, if you guys watched that and felt my pain along, with you guys, that was one of the toughest games to watch, because Gus Bradley and that defense made Drew Luck look like a superstar, right? But you can see there's most of the games we choked, the Chiefs, the Bucs, the Saints, the Broncos, we really just didn't show up to play in terms of defensive EPA in the second half. But now we don't have Gus Bradley. We don't have Anthony Lynn. We don't have this conservative defensive play caller and defensive scheme. We have Brandon Staley, who is at the forefront of defensive innovation, and we should be super excited to see what he brings to this defense. So if we look at the Rams EPA per play allowed, this is the first half chart, right? So we can see they had a couple of games where they didn't really do that well. The Cowboys, the Bills, the Niners, the Bucs in the first half to an extent. Every defense has a bad game. But this was only looking at one half, right? And they had a lot of games where, they had an insane defense. They had a really good defense. Remember, above the 75th percentile is really good. And they showed up to play. Like, they did a really good job against some of these defenses. And, if you want to pause the video and take a look at every single game, feel free to do so. But what I'm really excited about is to not see the Chargers choke any more games. And this graph should get everyone excited for that idea. If you look here closely, Brandon Staley only had 2 games. He only had 2 games where the second half defense was below the 75th percentile. And realistically, the Seahawks game which is week 16, it was game number 15, was the worst performance his defense had in the second half of any game. I mean, just look at how many games like had this insane defensive quality added to it. Like they had so many games where they just clamped up in the second half. And I think this is mainly due to Brandon Staley being super prepared and able to make adjustments on the fly. And I think this comes with collaboration and something Brandon Staley's always talked about. He wants to collaborate with his coaches. What does Ronaldo Hill see? What does Michael Wilhoit see? What does Derek Ansley see? Can they find like a hole in this offense that they can exploit in the second half? And I think that's something that Brandon Staley's going to bring over to the Chargers, which he obviously did really well with in the Rams, right? Like if we look at this Cowboys game, negative 0.3 EPA is really good. Like that would rank number 1 across every single team in the league throughout an entire season, right? And they didn't do that well in the first half, right? They went from 0.3, which is bad, to negative 0.3, which is really good. So I'm super excited to see what Brandon Staley is going to be bringing to this defense, and how hopefully, we see a good defense in the first half and in the second half. Or worst case, this defense, struggles a little bit in the first half, but they put the clamps on in the second half. They don't choke away any more games, and we can finally get rid of this Chargers curse that this franchise has been snake bitten for so long. And Brandon Staley is going to be the answer for that. And so the last thing I wanted to share with you guys was, kind of just looking at where Gus Bradley ranked in terms of second half defense throughout his entire coaching career with the Chargers. So from 2017 to 2020, the Chargers have had the 18th best second half defense, which is expected. They did choke away a lot of games, so that you should expect them to be a little bit below average. If we look at, just 2020, where they ranked, remember they were 4th in the first half in terms of EPA per play allowed, but in the second half, the Chargers ranked 26th. Like they had a bottom 7 defense in the second half. And I know, sometimes offenses are able to combat this defensive struggle. And this offense obviously could have done better in terms of rushing the ball and sort of in terms of putting up points on the board in the second half. But this defense didn't do the offense any favors. And to have the 26th ranked defense in the league in the second half, that's something that drastically needs to improve. And I'm confident that Brandon Staley is going to at least get this number closer to the mean. And I really believe that we will have a top 10 defense in total, and we could have a possible top 10 defense at least in the second half alone. So that's going to bring us to the end of today's episode. I know it was a little bit of a shorter one, but I just wanted to go over, some of the chokes the Chargers have had in 2020 and why Brandon Staley could be the answer to combating that problem, and really bring on a new era of Chargers football where we won't have to worry about choking the game away when we're up double digits in the second half. And hopefully, this is a problem that we found a long-term solution to. So as usual, don't forget to leave any potential topics you guys want me to go over in future videos. And with that, as always, bolt up.